She has no king, no heirs, no castle. And yet, she calls herself queen, not by lineage nor by power over others, but by dominion over herself. She rules no kingdom, but she commands her schedule, her space, her peace. She's celebrated in culture, idolized on social media, and echoed in endless affirmations. You don't need anyone to complete you. Choose yourself. Thrive alone. But is this a symbol of empowerment or a symptom of something else? What lies beneath the crown of the independent queen? For most of human history, a woman's role was written before she was even born. Wife, mother, caregiver. Her value was measured in obedience, fertility, and sacrifice. Her life, an echo of her mother's and her mother's mother before her. But then came the rupture. Industrialization opened doors to the workforce. Birth control gave her power over her body. Feminism gave her a voice. And the digital economy? It gave her independence without permission. She no longer needed a man to access the world, only Wi-Fi. The old script began to fade, and in its place, a new identity emerged. Not wife and mother, but self and career. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, a universal drive to break from the collective and discover the authentic self. And that's what this new archetype represents. The independent queen is not rebelling against men. She's rebelling against the inherited script. Autonomy is the ability to choose one's own path, to say yes or no without fear, to shape your life without asking for permission. It's more than independence. It's psychological freedom. And for many, it's the first step towards something deeper. Self-actualization. Maslow placed this at the peak of human need. Not safety, not love, but the full realization of who you are when no one else is telling you what to be. Erich Fromm spoke of the shift from belonging to being. Not losing connection, but moving beyond it. From identity rooted in others to identity rooted in self. This is where the independent queen stands. She is not lonely, she is alone. There is a difference. One is a wound, the other a form of power. For some women, autonomy is not just a choice. It's a lifeline, a way out of trauma, a release from obligation, a silent rebellion against repression dressed as tradition. But in the age of social media, freedom has a filter. She travels solo. She sips matcha in perfect lighting. She posts affirmations with serene captions. Just me and my peace. But is she free or performing freedom? Online, autonomy becomes aesthetic. There's pressure to appear unbothered, self-sufficient, effortlessly radiant. Not just to be empowered, but to look empowered. Philosopher Jean Baudrillard called this hyperreality. A world where the simulation becomes more real than reality itself, where the image of freedom replaces the experience of it. She's not living her best life. She's broadcasting the idea of a best life. And the more convincing the image, the harder it becomes to see what's real. Behind the smiles, is there anxiety, burnout, a quiet longing for connection? The independent queen may appear complete. But how much of her freedom is authentic? And how much is curated for the algorithm? Not all independence is born from strength. Sometimes it's born from hurt. Emotional walls can look like confidence. Avoidant attachment can disguise itself as self-sufficiency. And fear of intimacy? It's often renamed as boundaries, but not the healthy kind. The kind that keeps everyone out, even the ones who mean no harm. Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny, repress, or hide. And for some women, the need for love, dependence, or care gets buried beneath the crown. But denying these parts doesn't make them disappear. It only fragments the self. True wholeness, Jung said, comes from integration. from embracing all aspects of the psyche, even the ones that feel weak, vulnerable, or unworthy. Because true independence is not the refusal of love. It's the strength to love without losing yourself. The independent queen doesn't fit into the old categories. She's not the housewife waiting by the door. She's not the boss babe chasing hustle culture. She's not a victim of circumstance, and she refuses to be a product of expectation. She is something else entirely. A woman writing her own definition of femininity in real time. She doesn't ask for permission. She doesn't apologize for choosing solitude, ambition, or peace. She is modern, complex, and often misunderstood. But she is not confused. She is redefining what it means to be a woman. Not by following a new script, but by tearing up the old one entirely. Still, beneath the empowerment, a quiet question lingers. Is she building a life or protecting herself from it? What does it mean to be free? Is it the ability to go anywhere, love no one, answer to nothing? Or is it something quieter, harder? The Stoics taught that freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's mastery of the self, not being ruled by impulse, fear, or the opinions of others. True freedom is the discipline of inner peace. The existentialists saw freedom differently, not as escape, but as weight. The freedom to choose also means bearing the burden of choice, responsibility, uncertainty, consequences. To be truly free is to choose one's chains, to willingly carry the things that give life meaning, even when they're heavy. Love, purpose, sacrifice, commitment. So maybe the independent queen is free. Maybe she's hiding. Or maybe both can be true. Because freedom isn't just about walking away. Sometimes it's about knowing when to stay. The modern crown isn't worn, it's lived. Not in castles, but in quiet apartments filled with books, art, and silence. Not in titles, but in choices made when no one is watching. It's not bestowed by tradition, nor earned through conquest, but created moment by moment in the way she decides to exist. It's solitude, not as punishment, but as preference. It's the kind of peace that isn't loud or performative, just real. It's waking up without needing approval. It's being alone and not needing to explain why. The old crown was about control, of others, of land, of image. The new crown is about mastery of the self. It's not rebellion for rebellion's sake, but the quiet courage to live a life that feels right, even if no one else understands it. This is what the independent queen represents. Not just freedom from the past, but the question of what comes next. Because freedom is not an endpoint. It's a beginning. And it brings with it a deeper responsibility. To choose wisely, to live intentionally, to confront the self with honesty and grace. So the question isn't whether the independent queen is free. She is. The question is, what will she do with her freedom? Will she use it to grow, to heal, to connect in new, deeper ways? Or will she use it to hide? Because in the end, it's not the crown that defines her, but the life she builds while wearing it.